I want to bring in Paul Viollis, a CBSN security analyst who has been watching and listening along with us, and he joins me now on the phone. So, Paul, when we talked to Pat Milton, our investigative unit producer, earlier, she was talking about the FBI crisis response team that has been brought in to provide assistance to the local authorities, and she was spelling out some of those things that the FBI crisis response team can help with, including things like evidence recovery. Can you talk to us, Paul, about how that is beneficial? In what ways does that kind of assistance help move along an investigation like this?
Yes, certainly, Elaine. When you think about, especially where you're at right here in this part of Texas, this particular sheriff's office may not have the budget, may not be afforded the type of equipment and training that the FBI has at their fingertips, certainly to process a mass shooting. So when you think of the technology that's used at this point with respect to gathering evidence, DNA evidence, trace evidence, et cetera, it takes a variety of different types of equipment that law enforcement use, and the sheriff's department may not have what they need for this type of event. So with the FBI coming in, not only can you be assured that their assistance will enhance the validity and reliability of the evidence gathering, but it will also accelerate the speed to which they will come to certain conclusions. So, again, just another example of how agencies like the FBI can assist local agencies in situations like this.
All right. As you've been speaking, Paul, I want to show our viewers, if we have it, President Trump has just tweeted, this is just in the last few minutes or so, the president, as you recall, left for a trip overseas, an 11-day trip through Asia. The president tweeting from Japan. This is what he said just a short time ago on Twitter, quote, "May God be with the people of Sutherland Springs, Texas. The FBI and law enforcement are on the scene. I am monitoring the situation from Japan." Again, President Trump tweeting just a short time ago regarding the situation in Sutherland Springs, Texas, which continues to develop at this hour. And Paul, I wonder what at this point then are the outstanding questions? I imagine there are many that you have right now. Is there a priority in terms of the bits of information that law enforcement are trying to gather right now? What would be sort of the first, second, and third priorities as you look to get those details?
The first piece of information is going to start right at the crime scene, Elaine, and that's going to be shell casings. What type of weapon did this particular individual use? And that's what they are processing that right now as we speak. That's why they created that outer and inner perimeter we spoke about earlier. Mm-hmm. The second part will be the individual himself, the shooter. If it is actually verified that, we heard he's down, does that mean he's been shot? Does that mean he's deceased? Is he still alive? Is he in the hospital? I don't know that we know that for sure at this point. Mm-hmm. But the item 2 on that list, Elaine, is going to be the shooter himself, who he is, quick background on him, what, if any, type of involvement he's had with the criminal justice system in the past, and his relationship to this particular church and or possibly the administration of the church, because clearly this wasn't a domestic violence issue where he was after one or two people. He was making a statement against the entire congregation of the church. So his relationship to the church itself. And then 3 is going to be technology. It'll be, as we spoke about earlier, the police will need to move forward in securing search warrants for the shooter's home or homes, as well as vehicle and devices. And that's when they'll start taking a deep dive into his phone, who he's called, when he called, and how long he was on the phone with them, text messages that may have been sent to whom, et cetera. And then, obviously, as it relates to his computers, websites he was visiting, and had he planned this, and if he did, for how long, and what was the impetus behind that.
Paul, if you'll hang on for just a second, we want to bring in now Pat Milton on the phone. She is a senior producer with CBS News' Investigative Unit. Pat, I know you've been able to uncover some additional details. What have you learned?
Yes, we do have 2 law enforcement sources telling us that the church shooter is down. He was taken down after a pursuit. We're not clear as to what that pursuit was. It sounds like it was in a vehicle, but we're not sure. We're still, as I say, very fluid situation. It appears that he is dead, but we're not saying dead yet because the terminology that was used with us is down, and the situation is appearing to be contained.
Pat, I wonder, has there been any information about where that suspect was taken down? How close to the church was that?
Again, that is unclear. We do know that there was a pursuit. It seems like it was a vehicle pursuit, but I don't know how long, whether it was a brief one or whether it involved, a long pursuit on the highways.
And Pat, I know this is still in the early stages, but tell us what else you've learned in speaking to your law enforcement sources about federal assistance to the local police there, and also what it is that you've heard with respect to fatalities and injuries.
Yes, we're hearing that at least 15 people have been shot. We know that there are fatalities and we know that there are injuries, but that number may be climbing as we get more information. As far as the response, the FBI, the ATF, and U.S. Marshal Service have all responded and are on the scene. The FBI's evidence recovery is there, and also their crisis response team, which includes their active shooter team.
And you said U.S. Marshals as well?
Yes, U.S. Marshals responded. It's all part of the protocol. And I guess if there was somebody that was, in pursuit, they were fugitive, and they were looking for him, they would be responding.
I see. All right, Pat Milton, senior producer with the CBS News Investigative Unit. Pat, thank you very much for that information. We'll let you continue to speak to your sources for any additional updates. We still have Paul Viollis with us. Paul, you heard the very latest there from Pat Milton's law enforcement sources. What does that, if anything, now indicate? The fact that, according to her sources, the suspect is down after a pursuit.
Well, the first thing, I was curious about that because the first thing that came to mind here was this, as you were mentioning, this allegedly occurred right around 11:30 a.m. Central Time. And here we are 3-4 hours later. Who actually called this in? How did they get it? How were police provided with information regarding the shooter and the vehicle he was driving? So if in fact that's correct, that's fine. It's just that's the first thing that jumped to my mind because you get a decent lapse of time. Someone actually would have seen the shooter and would have witnessed the vehicle that he had to get into for that to be transported over to local law enforcement. So if that's the case, then rest assured, then it's very safe to assume that law enforcement has at least one eyewitness.
Right. And as we continue to watch these images here, I want to let our viewers know President Trump has weighed in from Japan, where he has just begun an 11-day trip through Asia. He tweeted this just a short time ago, the president saying, quote, "May God be with the people of Sutherland Springs, Texas. The FBI and law enforcement are on the scene. I am monitoring the situation from Japan." And we have with us now Paul Viollis continuing to help us understand the process here as investigators work to gather any clues about what happened and what a possible motive could have been. We know as well, Paul, that Pat Milton said U.S. Marshals were part of the effort in terms of the federal response. What does that indicate, if anything?
That really caught me off guard, I have to tell you, Elaine, because when I heard the marshals were there, it made me, the first thought is that this person was a fugitive or was wanted and had outstanding warrants on him. So I can't imagine why the Marshal Service would be at a mass shooting crime scene unless they had some type of involvement with the shooter or suspected shooter.